Tony East here with Forbes on the court of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It's right over there where the Pacers just won a game, believe it or not. Their second win in their last 7 outings now, as they've been struggling a little bit, but they got it done. They needed it. They beat the Wizards here by 12. Their biggest win of the season by margin. It didn't feel like their best performance. The Wizards are not a very good team. The Pacers were losing at halftime, but all they care about right now is results, and that's all they should care about given how poorly their season has started. They were 6-10 entering the day, 6-10. They never had a 16-game stretch that poor last season, right? They needed to find a way to just win. That's all that mattered to them, and they did, despite losing at halftime, despite having some defensive hiccups. They found a way to beat this Washington team here. The story of the game to me, the halftime turnaround from the Pacers, something they desperately needed after, again, losing 58-56 at the break in a game that felt like it could be hanging in the balance. In fact, 30 minutes into this game, the biggest lead for either team was just 4 points. It was very back and forth. No runs at all for either group. Just a basket here, a basket there, trade. I mean, maybe like the longest run was 6-ish in that stretch. It was just a battle. Both teams could not find a way to create any separation. Finally, in the third quarter, the Pacers went on a run from down 2 to up 10, 12-0 in total, to give themselves the first double-digit lead of the game, the first lead over 4 of the game. And that stretch really highlighted what mattered there. Of course, scoring 12 points in a row is a big deal, but they defended very well for a long stretch in the middle of that third quarter. That's something Pascal Siakam just told us to him stood out about the Pacers' turnaround in this game. The Wizards went up 73-71 in that quarter, and then the Pacers would go on to take an 83-73 lead with that 12-0 run, and it lasted quite a while. They got to 83 with 4:38 to go. Wizards didn't score until 3:42 to go in that third, but they hit 73 for the first time at the 7:56 mark. So really 3, 4, almost 5 minutes of play for the Pacers where their defense finally got some stops. And not only was it important because, the Wizards weren't scoring, but if you followed the Pacers for any amount of time since Tyrese Haliburton got to Indiana, a big thing for them is when they get stops, they can run, they can play free, they can use all 94 feet of the floor. It's harder to press them and break them out of their half-court sets that they want to do. So that stretch was, of course, important because they got stops. They played defense in a way that really mattered for them. They got the Wizards out of a rhythm, but they were able to run and score and do their thing. And it was their stars leading the way in that stretch. Haliburton hitting some threes, Pascal Siakam at the foul line, him bursting to the basket, Miles Turner putting the Pacers up 10 again right after that stretch with an emphatic dunk on Star Wars Night, one of his favorites of the year, right? So their best players who in the first half combined for 4 points, Haliburton, Siakam, and Turner did, all stepped up in that stretch. That stretch was huge, absolutely critical for the Pacers to have that and have that from their stars because, for those of you who watched my postgame video after they played the Bucks 2 days ago in Milwaukee, my takeaway was the opposite. I said the Pacers played bad for about 6 to 8 minutes of this game in pockets and were pretty good for the other 40, even outscoring the Bucks over that stretch. This game kind of felt like the opposite, where the Pacers played pretty poorly, even with the Wizards at best, outside of that stretch I just described in the third quarter, and then a little bit of a burst in the fourth to put it away. The Wizards got it closer in the fourth. Pacers did lead the whole fourth quarter, but it was a 2-3-point game, I believe, early in the frame before the Pacers were able to extend it and then have a strong close. So it was only 2 awesome stretches for the Pacers in this game, but that was enough. The Wizards, a very young, limited building team that can't really string together a lot at this time. So that was the critical moment to me when the Pacers figured out how to turn around their defense in the second half. The stat I would say to describe it more specifically was at halftime when the Wizards were winning and looked very capable and were threatening. They had 32 points in the paint, the Wizards did, on pace for 64, which wouldn't even have been the Pacers' worst night of the year, but very bad against a Washington team that is not very good. The Wizards finished this game with 44 points in the paint, so the Pacers allowed 12 in the second half. An absolutely massive turnaround to wall off the rim, and the Wizards still got enough, but not great, but enough three-point shooting, enough mid-range scoring. They made 20 free throws to stay in this, to keep up and make it a game. But once that rim got walled off and the Wizards had to kind of change their approach and figure out where their shots were going to come from, the Pacers were able to get enough steals to run. Even though the Wizards did take care of the ball. But, they scored off those turnovers. They got stops. They got rebounds. That was very important for the Pacers in this game. To win the rebound battle, even if only by a little bit. So that was a huge stretch, was figuring out how to finally keep the Wizards out of the paint and get things rolling in the second half. So that was, to me, the key moment of this game, is whatever was said at halftime, whatever got the Pacers to play better. They were passing a little bit too much in the first half. They weren't quite able to break down the zone enough. In the second half, they had the right balance. Their stars were better. Their defense was better. And TJ McConnell kept slicing up that zone. So let's get into some specific players that I thought mattered. I think lots of guys were pretty good in this game in ways that mattered. matter. The story will be three guys in particular. One is Tyrese Haliburton, who 7 for 18, not particularly good, but 5 for 11 from 3. That is his second best by percentage. 3-point shooting game this season. He's had a couple 4 for 10s, a couple 4 for 9s. His best night, 3 for 5 against Orlando. So this 5 for 11, 45.5% is very good, including a flurry in the third quarter. He was taking some heat checks in the fourth that maybe he shouldn't have, but him getting going would change everything for the Pacers. So if they're winning by enough that he can feel good doing heat checks, he probably should. 21 points and 9 assists for him, plus 12. He still has gravity and impact even through these struggles that he's had this year, and this wasn't even that particularly efficient of a night. To see him make 5 threes and feel comfortable getting them up was big, and of course he felt great about the win. Pascal Siakam, old reliable all season for the Pacers, once again making half of his shots with 22 points on 14 looks, made all of his free throws, which has been big for him this year. 6 rebounds, 6 assists. The Pacers' record might be the only thing that prevents Siakam from being an all-star. I think he's been terrific all year, and he was once again in this game, including hitting the dagger and a huge 3 in the fourth quarter on a nice pass from Ben Mathurin, who was moving the ball pretty well in this game. 2 big players off the bench, though, would be the actual stories in terms of the game changers tonight. One was Moses Brown. Moses Brown, we saw play in Houston for 0.6 seconds of rotation minutes. Other than that, just garbage time for him this season, and looked okay in those moments, finishing, rebounding. Tonight, in the rotation, they needed a Miles Turner, 2 very quick fouls. Miles Turner only finished the game with 2 fouls. Credit to Turner for that, but they had to change up their rotation because of that and go to Moses Brown. The Pacers' first 8 points came from Moses Brown in this game, and it wasn't even necessarily like they were calling plays for him, just very natural flow of the offense, quick chemistry with his teammates kind of moments. It helps that he's extremely tall. He can scoop up some boards because of his size. He had 4 and 12 and a half minutes in this game, 15 points with 3 made free throws and 6 made shots. I can't even believe this is possible. A week ago, this would have been an off-my-radar sentence. Moses Brown changed a game for the Pacers and saved them from a terrible start. He was critical in this game, played again in the fourth quarter and had some nice buckets. His first 15-point game since he was with the Cavs 3 teams ago, I believe. In 2022, he was so massive for the Pacers in this one, and that is how they were able to start the game good enough. And then TJ McConnell was the other vital bench player, as my camera tips over because I bumped the desk in this game. He could slice into that zone in a way that nobody else on the Pacers really could. TJ McConnell, 6 for 10 with his 12 points, 3 assists, and only 1 turnover. His plus-minus says he had a bad game. He did not. TJ McConnell was great. He always just has the loudest small scoring nights because his shots are so atypical and so rare to see go in at the rate that they do, but they did. Very impressive night from McConnell. I thought Johnny Furphy gave the Pacers great minutes in this game, defended pretty well, hit his only 3. They played him over Jarris Walker with rotation minutes at one point in the second half before an injury. Jarris Walker does close this game. And Obi Toppin was very efficient as well, 5 for 6, and he hit a corner 3, something he's been struggling with this year. Other guys contributed in other ways. Ben Mathurin had a fine night. He's been great on the glass. Quentin Jackson, they keep relying on for defense. Miles Turner with 10 boards after stepping up with foul trouble. They needed everybody tonight. It wasn't a pretty win, but it was one the Pacers needed. 7 and 10, 3 more in this building this week. A critical week for the Pacers. They need at least 3 of the 4. They got the first one. They need at least 2 of the next 3. All winnable opponents. We'll have videos from this arena on this channel. Thanks for watching. If you want a longer version of this with more analysis, check out Locked On Pacers. Thanks for watching, guys.